So, wishing you all a happy new year first of all. Hope your new year is going great so far, and wishing that you will be able to accomplish everything that you wish for this year as you intended, and all your plans will go right, and that it will be a very much academically achieving new year to all of you, right? So with that wish, let's start the lesson for today. So we have come somewhere along the way in chapter 8, e-marketing lesson. We have completed several slides. So let me walk you through what we have talked about so far, right? So in the e-marketing lesson, you have so far focused on how companies and the different brands in those companies use digital media in order to inform and in order to support their marketing goals, right? And you have learned that there are three main operational processes when it comes to e-marketing that companies usually follow, that are customer acquisition, customer conversion, and customer retention and growth, right? Those are the three main operational processes in e-marketing that we talk about, right? So moving on, we have elaborated on what each of these operating processes consist of, right? What we consider under each of these stages, we have talked about them. Then we have also defined what e-marketing means, right? What is e-marketing? We have provided you the definition provided by the Chartered Institute of Marketing, right? Then after that, we moved on to talking a little bit about e-marketing planning. Now, any business needs a business plan, right? So usually in a traditional marketing context also, there is a planning process going on. When it comes to e-marketing also, there are different planning processes that organizations follow, right? So one of the most abundantly used models is the SOSTAC framework by Paul Smith, introduced in 1999. There are different frameworks that can be used for e-marketing planning, right? For example, there's this RACE framework. Likewise, different frameworks or models are there. But in this particular lesson, we are going to focus on the SOSTAC framework. It's a very comprehensive framework that any organization can use in order to, build up or come up with an effective e-marketing plan. So I hope you will pay good attention to this particular segment because as you all have also observed, we have uploaded your assignment on the LMS and your group assignment is actually regarding the SOSTAC framework, right? So I hope you pay attention to today's lecture because, and also if you have any clarifications as we go along, please feel free to raise them, right? So under SOSTAC framework, there are mainly 6 stages that we talk about, right? There are situation and analysis, objectives, strategy, tactics, action, and control, right? So you have roughly talked about what each of these stages mean in a generic level in your last lesson. So this model comprehensively talks about what each of these stages can include, right? Although I say comprehensive, it's not like a fully exhaustive list. There are so many other things that can be included to this framework, but this is a good figure which depicts, some usual components that could be included in the SOSTAC framework, right? So let's come to that after we finished all the elements of the framework. First of all, let's start with our first stage, situation analysis, right? Situation analysis, we have talked about this earlier also in our digital business lecture series, how important it is for organizations to first of all understand their current situation, right? It's very important for any business, not only business, for you, me, everyone. Situation analysis is a good starting point for any plan that we may have, right? Where are we now? Where are we now at the moment, right? So what does this talk about? The aim of situation analysis is to understand the current and future environment in which the company operates, right? So in order to understand the environmental background in which an organization operates, that can be the current environment, that can be the future environment to which the organization is stepping into, right? So you already know that the environment is a very dynamic thing, right? It changes. There are different elements in the environment which we have talked about earlier as well. So these elements are constantly changing. So it's very essential for an organization to always keep a lookout on these changing elements and to gain an idea about the situation that they are currently confronted with, right? So why do organizations do this type of analysis? In order to ensure that the strategic objectives are realistic in light of what is happening in the marketplace. So by analyzing the environment, by analyzing the current situation, what does an organization or let's say, what is an organization able to do? They are able to, make sure that the strategic objectives that they have come up with are, realistic. They are realizable. Are they matching with the current situation in the environment? Now, an organization cannot have objectives that are not in line with the situation in the marketplace. No, they have to have a good idea what's going on in the environment. And whatever the objectives that they come up with should be aligned with the nature of this environment as well, right? So therefore, there should be a good alignment. So only if there's a good alignment, then will there be a good marketing plan in the stages ahead, right? So therefore, in order to make sure that the strategic objectives that the organization have in place are realistic, they have to do a situation analysis to understand that they are in the correct path, right? So now, for instance, take the university, right? Now, these days, we are still, although the restrictions are now much lighter than what it used to be regarding the COVID situation, still there are restrictions as to gathering in public places. No, still there are some restrictions on social distancing and such, and also, very crowded meetings are not encouraged. So if we have objectives as a university in the faculty, if we have an objective to start all the lectures in the coming week, right, in full capacity, physical lectures, that is not realistic in accordance with the environmental situation, right? So that is why it's very important for any business manager, right, any organization, to have a good idea about what's happening around us. And our objectives have to be aligned to those things, right? So then figure 8.5 shows the input from situation analysis that influence the e-marketing plan, right? So now in the next figure, which we are about to see, it highlights a few inputs that can be obtained from the situation analysis that can help to influence the e-marketing plan, right? What kind of things that we can use, what kind of tools or frameworks that can be used to, analyze the environment, as well as what sort of inputs can we gain from those analysis in order to inform the later stages of the e-marketing plan. That is what we are going to see, right? These mainly refer to a company's external environment. So majority of the time, these changes that happen are coming to the business from the external environment. No, it does not mean that the company should not disregard the internal environment, but the external environment plays a major role. Why? because it's very difficult for a business organization to control the elements of this external environment, right? Now, when we talked about organizational environment, we talked about micro environment and the macro environment. Hope you remember, right? In the micro environment, which sort of players do we find? We find the employees, the immediate environment of the organization, the suppliers, the customers, right? The micro environment. But when it comes to the macro environment, the players are not that easy to control, right? So especially there should be a higher focus on those kinds of players, those kinds of elements. Can you remember we talked about pestle factors or slip factors, right? Or sometimes we call it pest factor, right? So these factors are not that easy to control. And also, on the other hand, these factors have a high ability of influencing our business activities. Therefore, it's always good to have a good lookout on the external environment of your organization. And even from that, you have to be very careful about these macro environmental factors, which are very difficult for the organization to control. But once again, I emphasize, it does not mean that it only refers to the external environment. Organization should have a very good understanding about what is happening internally within the business as well, right? So let's talk about that more through this figure. Now here our e-business strategy is shown. So this is executed via the objectives that we set in the first place. We have e-business objectives, and in order to achieve those objectives, we come up with a good e-business strategy, right? So through what do we achieve this? Through a sound e-marketing plan, right? We have a sound e-marketing plan in order to achieve this e-business strategy, right? Ultimately, to achieve these objectives, right? So now in order to do the situation analysis here, right? In order to do the situation analysis, and through the situation analysis, there are several inputs that you can feed to the e-marketing plan of the business organization considered. අපි සලකා බලන ආයතනයේ e-marketing plan එක modify කිරීම සඳහා එහෙම නැත්නම් e-marketing plan එකට helpful වීම සඳහා situation analysis එකෙන් inputs ගණනාවක් අපිට ලබා ගන්න පුළුවන්. So some of these have been listed out here, not all, some, right? So we can do a demand analysis as an organization. We can do a demand analysis and see to inform online revenue contribution. So we can analyze the demand and see whether our customers are ready to go digital, for example. What kind of demand do our customers have in terms of our digital products? Let's, for example, say a bank, right? A bank which has a plan to go digital. So via the demand analysis, they can get an idea about what percentage of their customers are currently using digital channels to fulfill their services, right? There might be different age groups. So from those age groups, what is the age group that mostly demanding our digital channels? What is the age group that mostly demanding the digital products, such as, mobile applications that we introduce? What is the demand? What percentage? So based on that, they can gain an idea about what will be their revenue contribution, right? What is the revenue contribution from traditional channels? What is the revenue contribution from digital channels? Do we need improvements in the digital area? If we need improvements, in which areas, in which age groups, in which demographics do we need those improvements? Likewise, those decisions can be taken by doing a comprehensive demand analysis. Which products are mostly demanded, right? Even from the mobile applications, what is the most downloaded application, right? Through which channels do our customers mostly access our website? Likewise. So a comprehensive demand analysis can be performed. Then we can also do a competitor analysis, right? can do a competitor analysis. It's also very important because now you don't exist in isolation in a marketplace. අපි තනිවම නෙවෙයිනේ marketplace එකක compete කරන්නේ නේ. There are a lot of other players. Now if I refer the earlier example I took of a bank, we take a bank, there are key players in the market, right? Now as a bank, then if you are going to introduce a digital strategy, you should essentially focus on who your competition is. How many players are there in the market? Who are the key players, right? What are their competitive strategies? What are their digital strategies? What is their market position currently? Where are they positioned in the market, right? And then what sort of customer segments do they address through their strategies? What is their market share, right? What are their key strengths and weaknesses, right? So likewise, a competitor analysis you can do, right? Then intermediary analysis is also important. Now, through the competitor analysis, you can gain an idea about where differential advantage is, where differential advantage exists, right? When you analyze the strategies followed by different banks, for example, you gain a good idea about then how can differential advantage be delivered to customers. Anith organizations නොකරන අපිට කළ හැකි දේ මොකක්ද කියන එක ගැන අවබෝධයක් ලබා ගන්න නම් අපි competitors ලව analyze කරන්න ඕන. එයාලගේ strategies analyze කරන්න ඕන. නේ? එයාලා strong කොයි තැන්වලද weak කොයි තැන්වලද එහෙනම් අපිට opportunities තියෙන කොයි තැන්වලද කියන එක අඳුන ගන්න අපිට මේක භාවිතා කරන්න පුළුවන්. Then intermediary analysis is also important. Why? In order to see whether we need any channel restructuring, right? Who are the intermediary parties that are currently being actively used or actively being serviced in this environment, right? For example, අපේ competitors ලා මොන වගේ channel partners ලාත් එක්කද සම්බන්ධ වෙලා ඉන්නේ. අපි මේ service එක deliver කරනකොට අපිට තව කාගේ සහයෝගයද ගන්න ඕනේ. Intermediary parties කවුද අපිට ඕනේ. Now especially in the banking industry, we know Fintech is very popular, no? What is Fintech? Have you heard of Fintech? මොකද්ද Fintech කියලා කියන්නේ? Yes. What is Fintech? Anyone heard of that? No idea? Fintech කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Very quiet. Why is that? Have you heard of that term? Do you have an idea of what that term means? Fintech? Yes or no? Excuse me. No idea. So, no idea. Nobody has an idea. Why don't you have an idea about those things? Now you should, as third year undergraduates, you should be aware of these things, right? You should be on the lookout for the things that happen around you, especially in the technological world. Fintech, especially in the finance sector, we call them financial technologies, right? One of the financial technologies, then revolutionary financial technologies ගොඩක් introduce වෙලා තියෙනවා නේ. So fintech or financial technologies have created massive changes in various business sectors, right? Maybe banking, maybe retail, maybe hospitality sector, or whatever. There many different sectors, right? Many different industries. Financial technologies have created a lot of revolutions, right? So through these, many new intermediaries have emerged, right? Intermediary parties who provide financial services, financial technologies for new intermediaries who provide new technologies for providing these financial services for payments, for example, right? Secure payment gateways, even, digital payment facilitations, right? So banks are having a very good relationship with these kinds of third parties, these kinds of intermediaries who facilitate certain technologically aided services. Now, many commercial banks, for instance, they are using this payment application provided by Pay Here. Have you heard of the company Pay Here? No. Right. So in Sri Lanka, they are actually having a very good stance in terms of providing payment facilities, payment gateways. Even when you are using a payment options, digital payment options, you are using without knowing you are using the, payment gateways provided by that company, right? So likewise, there are many intermediaries that are used within the industry, right? I'm just taking just one single industry, but you can think of when you're doing the assignment, what sort of situation is there in terms of intermediaries, right? So when you have a good idea about what your competitors are using, for example, in terms of intermediaries, then you have a good understanding about, do we need a channel restructuring? Are we using the latest, intermediaries that are being used in the industry by other players? Likewise, intermediary analysis is important. Then, opportunities and threats, you have to definitely analyze, right? Opportunities and threats apita enne external environment ekenne. So tell me a framework that you can use in order to understand these opportunities and threats. Making opportunities saha threats understand karanna ඔයගලන්ට use කරන්න පුළුවන් framework එකක් කියන්නේ එහෙම නැත්නම් model එකක්, something that you can use in your report also. You can either list out these are the opportunities and threats, or you can be smart and more strategic, and in order to stand out from the rest of the students, you can use some effective models or framework. Opportunities and threats අපි identify කරන්නේ මොන වගේ analysis එකකින්ද? Yes, very good. Not from SWOT analysis actually. SWOT analysis we mainly use in order to identify opportunities and threats also is there, right? SWOT analysis also opportunities and threats you can identify, but also internal component is there, right? Internal business component is also there, right? So strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, all are included in SWOT analysis. So keep that in mind. And also, yes, very correctly, pestle analysis. If you're only having an external focus, you can use a SLEP analysis or pestle analysis and see මොන areas වලින්ද අපිට opportunities තියෙන, threats තියෙන, right? The banking industry එක ගත්තොත් political environment එකෙන් මොන වගේ changes ද වෙලා තියෙන්නේ, ඒක අපේ company එකට opportunity එකක්ද threat එකක්ද? You can very nicely classify, right? You can nicely show whether it's an opportunity or a threat, right? So technological environment එකේ මොනවද වෙලා තියෙන changes? So 1 2 3 you can list down, and then you can show whether it's an opportunity, whether it's a threat, right? Then legal environment ekhe, what has happened? Ecological environment ekhe, what has happened? Economically, what has happened, right? So many things have happened economically lately. So are there opportunities, are there threats, right? Now in this recent COVID situation even, now while staying at home was detrimental or disadvantageous for many traditional businesses, for businesses in the telecommunication industry, there were huge opportunities, right? So maybe in the retail industry, there might have been certain threats. There might have been certain downgradings. There have been certain, places where they were lagging behind. But in the telecommunication industry, there were huge opportunities, right? So likewise, you can very nicely show an analysis of how these things have impacted in the particular company that you have selected. Banking industry, you can very nicely show right? But you have to do a good analysis of these things. You can't just say that these are the opportunities and threats. You have to nicely, analyze. Maybe if you have a company contact, that would be great, right? You can do that as well, but you are free to use any secondary data sources as well. Newspaper articles, web articles, you can use research output, you can use, right? Research articles you can refer. So and nicely show the opportunities and threats faced by the organization. In the SWOT analysis, if you take it, you should also be able to show internally what is happening within the organization. In order to show strengths and weaknesses, you have to have an idea. No, that is the ideal way to do it actually. If you can show the resources that the company is having, what are the key competencies the company is having, right? And what are the constraints that the company is facing. You can do a nice analysis, that would be great. But depending on the access to information that you have, that may differ, right? So then here, SLEP factors have been once again highlighted separately because of the focus on the external environment, right? We have talked about this earlier also. So through this, you can identify not only constraints. Now, one of the inputs may be constraint. SLEP analysis එකක් කරලා අපිට හොයාගන්න පුළුවන් එක input එකක් තමයි අපිට දෙන constraints මොනවාද? අපේ digital marketing objective එක achieve කරගන්න තියෙන, right? But ඒකට අමතරව opportunities තියෙනවා වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්, right? Now demographic environment එක දිහා අපි බැලුවාම සමහර වෙලාවට එහෙම නැත්නම් social environment එක සමහර වෙලාවට socio-economic landscape එක ඇතුලේ සමහර විට අපි දකිනවා වෙන්න පුළුවන් trend එකක් තියෙනවා යම්කිසි age category එකක් වැඩිපුර කියන්නේ traditional modes of transactions වලට යොමු වෙන්නේ නැහැ. වැඩිපුර digital transactions වලට තමයි යොමු වෙන්නේ, right? එහෙම නැත්නම් internet penetration එක අපි දකිනවා වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා percentage එක ගිය අවුරුද්දට වඩා. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි දකිනවා යම්කිසි age category එකක smartphone භාවිතය වැඩි වෙලා තියෙනවා. So ඔයගලන් කොහොමද මේවා දකින්නේ? මේවා කොහොමද ඔයගලන්ට identify කරන්න පුළුවන්? You have to read, you have to refer. There are good reports. I remember sharing with you the digital 2021 report shared by Hootsuite, right? I remember sharing that with you. So refer to such reports. And there are some very interesting insights you can gain from article providers of sites such as Deloitte, KPMG, then there are many others like that, right? So you can read those things, right? And gain an idea about what's happening around, and read about the Sri Lankan context, right? And do a nice analysis about the situation analysis. Don't just jot down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are the opportunity threats. Be very comprehensive in your analysis, right? They have taught you many different models, many different theories, many different frameworks. Use them in this place, right? You can come up with your own frameworks as well. I mean, like not in a research focused manner, but you can very nicely list out in a very effective manner how you have analyzed this environment, right? Then resource analysis. This has an internal focus or an external focus, as you think. Yeah. Resource analysis, internal focus or external focus, mostly. Yeah, it can be both, but here mostly it focuses on the internal scenario, right? What sort of resources does the company have, like I mentioned earlier, right? I hope you remember. Here, for instance, in terms of inputs that we gain from resource analysis, two things have been listed out: e-marketing budget, staff, channel partners. Actually, 3 things, no? 1 comma is missing: e-marketing budget, staff, channel partners. So, in terms of resources, company ke koi tanada inne, right? Api financially sound tanakada inne. Financially, api kohomada perform kala tiyenne, අපි කොහොමද profit making the loss making the අපේ budgets කොයි විදිහද allocate වෙලා තියෙන්නේ ඒ වගේ දේවල් තුලින් වෙන්න පුළුවන් එහෙම නැත්නම් staff එක පැත්තෙන් right do we have a very qualified great staff that is one of our key resources maybe right and then what sort of channel partners do we have partnerships with so those things right so nicely do the situation analysis you can use the SLEP framework the SWOT analysis like you mentioned you can do the PESTEL framework sometimes you can use the RIN framework to show whether you have any special resources competencies that you can use to compete in this environment right so there are think of how you can be creative around this right don't just list down as 1 2 3 4 5 right and even when you know look at the nature of the industry tell me a useful framework or a model that you can use when you want to gain an idea about the nature of the industry අපි industry එක ගැන බලනකොට නේ company එක external environment එක evaluate කරනවා වගේම අපිට idea එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ නේ industry එකේ attractiveness එක කොයි වගේද right industry එක ඇතුලේ ඉන්න විවිධ players ලා ඉන්න පුළුවන් how do we do that usually what's the useful model that we can use as you think yeah very good you can use the 5 forces analysis of Porter right so likewise think right think in which areas you are going to touch on right which models am I going to touch on I don't mean that you are going to list down all these models and frameworks no but think how you can effectively utilize these things based on your information availability right based on the context of your report think of those things right so moving on then we come to the second stage objective setting now you have done a very good situation analysis right now you have a very good idea about where your company is you know positioned right now when it comes to objective setting is actually based on the understanding you obtain from the situation analysis that I have explained to you in earlier chapters also right so effective e-marketing plans are based on clearly defined objectives since these will influence the strategies and tactics so we have talked about this lengthily when we were talking about strategy lesson no I hope you remember so if you are coming up with good effective objectives then that is a great deal of help when you're coming up with strategies and actions in the later stages we talked about the elements of an effective objective I hope you remember right so then also other than influencing the strategies and tactics also these objectives can help the organization to communicate the strategic aims to the workforce and investors so if you have clear cut solid clearly defined objectives then you can also communicate them clearly to your organization's employees and investors right where your organization is headed if I take the example of a bank that I took earlier as a bank where are we headed what are our objectives for the next 6 months what are our objectives for the coming year what are our 5-year objectives you can get creative there right you can come up with your own objectives it can be long term it can be short term right so it helps the organization to communicate to its employees where the organization is heading towards in order to gain their commitment is very important right if the employees or if the workforce does not have a good idea about where the company is headed then it's very difficult to gain their commitment right all right then strategies are agreed to be most effective when they support specific business objectives so these strategies are known to be effective when the strategies are supportive or they are helpful for the specified business objectives that we have defined. So quickly tell me, what are the elements of a good objective? අපි objective එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ කියලා කතා කරපු elements ටික මොනවාද? What is the abbreviation that we use? Yeah, very good. Objectives should be SMART, right? SMART objectives should be there. So when you are coming up with your assignment also, please make sure that you come up with these good comprehensive objectives, not very primitive objectives like, you know, increase in the revenue base, decrease in the cost. Onno e wage objectives liyanna epa. When you're coming up with objectives, please show that academic rigor of a third year student, right? You have learned a lot of these things about strategy by now. So you have to come up with a very creative, nice report. So this is your chance to become creative and show what's inside you, right? So in order to score a high mark, show that you are applying the theories which you have learned so far in the classroom. Now you have learned MIS, you are almost covered a bigger portion in digital business, right? So you have a vast knowledge about formulating strategies and you know, different frameworks and models that you can use in order to do that. So apply that as much as possible. So this is your chance to show that you have learned something and how well you have learned it. This is your chance to shine, right? And show how good you are in practically applying these things, right? So when you go to work someday also, these are the things that you have to do. The theories that you have learned, how are you going to practically apply in a company, right? So that is what we are going to test here, how creative you are and how you are applying these things, right? Then a useful technique to help align strategies and objectives is to present them together in a table with the insights developed from situation analysis, which may have influenced the strategy, right? So a good technique that businesses can use in order to show the alignment of the strategies and objectives is to present them in a table format. I hope you remember we showed you a table format when we were discussing the strategy part as well, right? So where you can tabulate very clearly in this particular scenario what you learned from the situation analysis. Based on that, what was the objective you came up with? Based on that, what is the respective strategy that you propose, right? So then there are a clear alignment you can show. For instance, if you take that from the situation analysis, you have observed that the mobile penetration in the Sri Lankan among Sri Lankan citizens have grown by this amount within this period, right? It's an observation that you have made and you cite the source, right? So it's very important for you to cite from where you took that. You can't just say mobile penetration mecharaking වැඩි වෙලා කියලා. You can't just write it. You have to clearly show from where you got it, right? From where you got that information, you have to show. You have to cite the source and they have to be clearly shown in your reference list, right? So when you say that mobile penetration has improved by that amount, then එහෙනම් ඒකට හරියන්න මොකක්ද අපේ business objective එක? Now there can be many others, right? Not just one objective, there can be a list of objectives. But from that particular observation, then based on that, what is the objective that you have come up with, right? Or let's say based on a competitor analysis, you have observed something. Based on your you know, slept analysis, you have observed these things. So in order to align with those observations in your slept framework, or maybe your SWOT analysis, or maybe your Porter's 5 forces, right? So then based on that, you say, hari එහෙනම් මේකට හරියන්න අපේ business එක අපි select කරපු business එක මෙන්න මේ වගේ objectives ටිකක් හදාගත්තා නම් හොඳයි, right? Then digital marketing strategy එකක් නේ ඔයාලා හදාන්නේ නේ, digital marketing plan එකක් නේ. එහෙනම් මේ observation එකට අනුව අපි මේ වගේ objective එකකට යන්න. මේ objective එක achieve කරන්න එහෙනම් අපි business එකට මොන වගේ strategy එකක් තියෙන්න ඕනේද, right? So you can get creative, right? So I'm not going to propose these things, otherwise you will focus on my answers only, but see how you can get creative in those things, right? So you can nicely show them in a chart. And not just those 3 columns, you can think of other ways how you can incorporate, right? How you can comprehensively show your digital marketing plan that you can think of, right? Then we come to the strategy part, right? So we talked about situation analysis, we talked about objective setting, now we come to the strategy part, right? So what do we do here? Marketing tactics to implement strategies and objectives are traditionally based around the elements of the marketing mix of how to engage customers throughout their life cycle as part of customer relationship management. එතකොට මොකද්ද මේ marketing tactics වලදී වෙන්නේ? සරලවම කිව්වොත් tactics හරහා අපි කරන්නේ මොන වගේ දෙයක්ද? We try to, yes, you learned this last week. What do we try to do through tactics?